I'm in Derby and I've come to the Nottingham Road Cemeteries. Now cemeteries because there's one on each side of the road here. I'm looking at the one with the tower, and then as I pan across this rather busy road, there's an entrance over this side. It's not clear what the difference is, so let's start with this one, explore it, and then we'll go across the road and see the other part. Well, straight away there's this cracking good monument. At the top we've got the doves with the little olive branches. We've got the clasp hands, and around the clasp hands it says Showman of Britain and Ireland. In loving memory of James, the beloved husband of Alicia Whiting, and Alicia Whiting and then a couple others. And I just love this sorrowing maiden leaning against a stone at the bottom here. Rather beautifully done. Got a lovely face on her as well. Close by we have this war grave. This is Sergeant W.R. Hemsley, a navigator in the Royal Air Force. 1940, aged 21. And they've added at the bottom, the family, gone but not forgotten. Now, as I move inside the graveyard, you can see extending away down the field there. This is in memory of George Deadman, 1943, age 26. And then George Deadman and Annie, his wife, presumably the parents of the first George. There's a Kenneth Francis Boyling here, 2010. Now, Boyling is not a name I'm familiar with, but nearby we have Seymour Francis Boyling, and here's Joseph Boyling. There's a heartbreaking grave here. Chardonnay, Louise Easton. A princess was born 2006 and she returned to her castle in 2016, aged 9. Like so many of these graveyards, you can see the war graves wherever you look. There are 3 at least in this shot. I pan over there, there's another, and down there 2 more. Everywhere you look there are war graves. As much as I'd like to, I can't cover them all, but here's one picked at random. Warrant Officer 3rd Class F.G. Bunn, MM for Military Medal, 13th Derbyshire Home Guard, 1942, aged 48. Now this is a design I've seen in other graveyards, although they all vary a little. We have the lady reaching up and plucking blossoms or fruit from an overhanging vine. The name on here is for Elizabeth, the wife of Charles E. Dowsett, 1942. A very simple inscription, and oh so true. To live in the memories of those we love is not to die. And written on the side stones, unobtrusively, is Frank Clifford and Hannah Clifford. So nice to see in this graveyard that where stones are unsteady, they have staked them to stop them falling. A number of graveyards I've been to recently where if a stone is unstable they simply push it over. So it's nice to see Derby Cemetery making an effort to preserve these memorials. However, there's not very much you can do when the ground is very unstable. I would think this stone has been put down too soon. They should have let the ground settle for a year or two before putting the stone in place. This horizontal stone, which is very badly cracked, has been fenced in to protect it, as if it's something special. I don't recognise the names. We've got Elizabeth Ward, and at the bottom we've got Archer Ward, who died in 1809. If anyone has any idea why that stone is specially preserved, drop it in the comments below. An elaborate memorial in black stone with the statue of Christ in front of it. And on the horizontal part, Joseph Higgins, 1935, age 60, and Catherine Higgins. And over the other side we have Mary Hobson and Walter Hobson. We would love to know the story behind this. My dear husband, Wilfred M. Rijard, accidentally killed on his 50th birthday, 1941. What happened to Wilfred? Accidentally killed doesn't sound as if it's anything to do with the war. There's a story there. Now close by, this one is to do with the war. Arnold Charles Nixon, killed on active service, 1941, aged 20 years. One with the unhappy lady hanging on to the cross. The inscription beneath is Edith Ann, the daughter of Abraham and Annie Willingham, and she was 63 years old. I come back to these war graves. I'm just looking down the graveyard here. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 war graves in this single shot. Here's an angel with the most enormous wings. They're bigger than she is. Frank Lewis Wood Jones, a dear husband, 1944, aged 54. There are problems with the graves in this graveyard. It looks as if the soil is very unstable because there are so many stones that are just collapsing. It's not vandalism, it's just that the ground isn't really as firm as it needs to be. I'm looking across the graveyard at this recent grave, very elaborately decorated, and I wouldn't mind betting that that belongs to a travelling family of showmen or Romanies. They really go in for the most elaborate decoration of the memorials. So let's have a closer look at this one. Here we are, a picture of Mummy and Daddy, and then a picture of the lady who has just been buried here. Another picture over there, and on the stone we read John O'Donnell, Gypsy John, died 2015. So these flowers are to commemorate his wife, who presumably has just passed away in the last week or two. A nice touch on this one, Herbert Nathaniel Baker, Sunrise, 1932, Sunset, 2007. And then again for Mary Ann Richardson beneath, Sunrise and Sunset. Johnny, Jonathan Eugene Poundle, has the crossed flags of Canada and the United Kingdom. Marathon legend. In memory of a loving man and unique talent, Arthur Keeley, aged 94. World record holder, Olympic and Commonwealth Games athlete, Great Britain International. And then we look down here. Arthur was a very dedicated athlete who pioneered new training regimes. He ran 27 marathons, winning 12. He held world records for track marathon. And a lot more information about him. And if I can pan back down here, there is a picture of the great man as a senior, and it lists his records that he did while he was a senior runner. Beautifully decorated grave, set off by the black stone underneath. Joseph Rodney Wotton, 1911. This is a wonderful graveyard. I'm finding lots of interest in here, and we're still only on the first part. We haven't crossed the road yet. There's a pair of stones here, and the surname on there is Cadine. And some more very elaborate memorials. The left hand one, Samuel Smith, brackets Chubby. The middle one is the Calendines, again Alice and Matthew. And on the right hand side is Michael Mark McShane, husband of Salome. This one is to Dr. Ivan Martchenko, a man beloved by his family and Ukrainians in exile. I'll congratulate the cemetery organisers once again. All the way down here you can see they've stopped these stones falling over by staking them and binding them. The ground is very unstable here, and I've been to so many cemeteries where the people that manage it just push stones over if they're not stable. But here they've endeavoured to save them and top marks them for that. Here's another one very well decorated, and again it's to the Calendine family. And a little further down, this massive block of stone, again Cadine Mary, and her father William Cadine and Kriston Cadine. I'm going to have to stop showing you these, but they're all so well decorated and such expensive stones. This is our dear little girl Violet, daughter of Violet and Matthew Cadine, and she was 13 years old when she died. And more of these large black expensive stones with gold writing. The heart-shaped one is Matthew Hibbs. Behind that is Rennie Squires. Over the back is Clara Ord and Martha Squires. And the big open book here on my right is Anita Squires and Thomas Squires. A nice stone for Paul Anthony, 1958 to 2020. But I'm not quite sure I like the blank bit on the right hand side. It sort of says, I'm waiting for his wife to die. Clearly Philip Allen Gibson, 42, was a football fan. You can see the football at the base of the stone, and you can see the club badge for Derby County, otherwise known as the Rams. Well, Philip Reginald Treese had no airs and graces about him. The image at the top is of a dust cart. So good old Philip carried out the essential task of being a dustman. There are bins down the left hand side as well. This is interesting. Michael, the only son of Reginald and Winnie Harrison, 1954, aged 7 years. But beneath that, on the bottom there, we have his father, Reg Harrison, FA Cup winner, 1946. That'd be Derby County Football Club. He died in 2020, aged 97. And we have the Derby County badge again on the stone. Interesting to see the images they've carved at the top left there. Seems to be a plane or even a doodle bug or a missile, and it seems to be a rifle, and there's a railway engine at the bottom. Well, Derby was famous as a railway city, so maybe that's just reflecting the things they produced here in Derby. Well, I'm going to leave the graveyard on this side of the road, and let's go across and see what's in the other part of the cemetery. Immediately I enter the second part, I feel that this is the older part of the cemetery. The stones are much grander, much more established, and there's not much, at least from here, indication of more modern graves. Having just made that statement, right here just inside the entrance are two modern graves. On the left, in the heart-shaped stone, we have Rhodey May Smith, age 76, and on the right hand side we have Coralina Smith, brackets Jimmy. Directly opposite them is this extraordinary first name, Uneti Hamer, 1916, and her husband George Hamer. Uneti, that's the first one of those I've come across. Nearby is the angel, partially dressed, and there are 3 doves on the cross. And at the bottom we learn it's to our dear daughter Isadora Finney, 1921, aged 21 years. This stone is at a crazy angle and unlikely to be there for much longer. We come back to this same theme we've seen here and in other graveyards, of the lady reaching up and plucking the fruit or the blossoms from an overhead tree. But they're all subtly different. Anyway, this is Mary, the wife of Charles Henderson, 1921, aged 59. I do hope they find a way of preserving that stone because it's rather a nice memorial. Pair of stones here in the same design, although the one in the front is slightly leaning inwards. George Newton Brown on the left and John Moore on the right. This one has been laid down. It's rather a nice design with the angel with her wings carrying up a young person, I think. And this is for my dear wife Elsie May Sherwin, 1926, age 45. A large horizontal tomb and a very grand sounding name, Hepworth Tropolit Alton of Abbots Hill, Derby, formerly of the Manor House, Boroughwash. On the other side we learn that his wife was just plain old Helen. This is a monstrous stone, so large and must be so heavy, and the ground is not taking its weight very well, it's at an angle. This is George Holm, who died in 1893. But what a magnificent stone. Just a very readable stone. Benjamin Poyser, November the 18th, 1865, aged 32. A better husband never lived, a kinder father never died. Thomas, son of James and Anne Ball, 1860, aged 21. And underneath that we have two more of the Ball family. John Smith departed this life in 1875, aged 65 years, and his wife in 1890. Next door is Thomas Smith, 1861, aged 24 years, and Sarah, his sister, who died in 1864, aged 19, and their cousin, 1899, aged 40. Some of these inscriptions are wonderfully preserved. Anne Adcock, 1868, aged 71. Caroline, the wife of Edward, and youngest daughter of the above, 1872, and a couple more beneath that. But as clear as the day the stone was originally put up. Joseph Bowden, 1871, aged 75. Sarah Bowden Hardy, 1906, aged 68. Elizabeth Jane Hardy, 1919, aged 86 years. It's quite remarkable how this stone has remained so as if new. Anne, the wife of John Austin, 1873, aged 75, and John Austin, 1875, aged 78. So we've got a stone that's been standing there for 140 years, and it's as good as new. Now this angel's a little different. She's carrying a trumpet, and she's got a star mounted on her forehead. The memorial is for George Musson, 1901. Walter Buckland, husband and father, 1881, aged 55. Mary, his wife, 1897. Again, this particular stone has retained its inscription remarkably well. It's a sort of slate-like material. If you want your inscription to last, I suggest you go for that material. And of course, as always, there are these war graves. Private W. Bill, Nottingham and Derbyshire Regiment, Notts and Derby Regiment, 14th of December 1915. We have no age, and nobody's added any words at the bottom of the stone. Further in on this section, you can see there is some filling in with newer graves. Difficult to make out what the image is on this stone for Johnny Anthony. If I close up on it, it looks like an Egyptian statue of some sort. It's always nice when they find new ways of describing somebody. In loving memory of a fine, articulate lady. Kathleen Moore, 2013. An articulate lady. A very decorated stone. Right round the outside we have stars, some flowers, we have a fleur-de-lis, we have grasping hands, we have more flowers. A lot of detail in that stone. And this is for Henry, the beloved husband of Eliza Elizabeth Wilde, 1899, aged 51 years. And then Eliza Elizabeth, the wife of William Cooper, 1901. So did she remarry? It looks like it. Eliza Elizabeth Wilde. She lost Henry in 99, and then she died in 1901, but She was then the wife of William Cooper. Far across the other side and against the trees is this very large statue of Christ on the cross. He's got the crown of thorns on. Not quite sure what that's supposed to be on his head. Is it a halo? It hasn't come off very well. Now this stone itself, it remembers our dear mother, the beloved wife of William James Martin, 1888 is it? 98? And dear father 1894. That's a very detailed and very large sculpture. Well, as I go further into the cemetery, there are more and more graves. Clearly this is somewhere that's currently used, and there are hundreds, thousands of memorials to have a look at. It's difficult to know where to start. There's a section here where each of the tombs is a miniature garden planted out with flowers. Every one in this section. I've looked at the inscriptions and I think they're all Islamic graves. Excuse me if I've got that wrong. Difficult to show you a picture because the sun is right behind the graves and they're all facing, so that I'm shooting into the sun as I try to get the graves themselves. I'll just show you one or two so you can understand why I think they're probably Islamic. This is Naz Sadiq. This is Muhammad Bostan, son of the late Muhammad Ibrahim. This one is Mr. Muhammad Afzal, Allah-fearing, humble human being. So the mention of Allah will seem that these are Islamic. I will say though that having each of the graves being a little flower bed with its own sets of flowers makes it a very attractive place, and they all seem to be cared for. An area here with some very recent graves. You can see the fresh soil, but a lot of them seem to be Caribbean origin. I've noticed the pictures on the stones and the Jamaican flag. There's a row of new memorials here, just separated from everything else. It's not clear why they're separate, but this stone here is quite interesting. Stuart Ives Andrews, and at the top we've got the rear of a performance car, and alongside him is Maria Ann Isles née Perrott, and she's got a greyhound. And now I spot in the far corner, way all the other graves, a group of burials. So let's go and have a look at those. Well, there's no obvious reason why this group is here. Nothing exceptional about the stones or the inscriptions. Is it perhaps that a particular church has a particular spot in the cemetery? Or maybe a particular undertaker has a particular area that he buries the clients. The inscriptions are just the ordinary inscriptions, nothing to set them apart. Still very much being used though. There's some very new graves at the end. There's another group of new graves here, separated by quite a distance from where the great mass are buried. I wonder why they are separated. If I had to guess, I would suspect they all belong to the same church. but that is just my wild guess as to why these stones are separate from the rest. Now the rest is a very large area with probably thousands of stones. It's going to be quite impossible to even see a small proportion of what's here. But I'll wander up and pick out anything that I find interesting. Eric Amon Elliott, the 3 E's, has got the red and white scarf at the top, and at the bottom, "You'll never walk alone." So I'm guessing that's Liverpool Football Club. It looks as though Derek Joseph Montague, architect, had a little bit to say in the design of his stone, and he's got his signature Monty on the stone. What the organisers of the cemetery have done is build long pathways of concrete, and the memorial stones stand on that solid concrete base, so there's no chance of them subsiding, collapsing, becoming dangerous. What an excellent idea. What a wonderful inscription. First of all, we have a 747 aeroplane, British Airways, Terence Oldham, husband, father, grandfather, brother, colleague and friend, engineer, golfer, carpenter, advisor, mentor and guide, expert wire brusher, always cooked with gas. That is superb. This is a simply amazing graveyard. There is just so much of interest here. I could make a whole series of videos about this one cemetery. But unfortunately I don't live in Derby or anywhere near it, so I just invite you to come and see it. This cemetery is so full of surprises. Look at these. Sort of mini mausoleums. 5 of them, just in a row against the hedge here. This looks like one of the graves from the travelling community, and if we look at the image down here, we can see that there's a caravan and a little settlement. What I do like though is on the right hand side, for Mary Ann Henry, is a pair of slippers. Obviously she loved her slippers. This stone with the teddy bear hanging over the heart is in loving memory of Dean Thomas Docherty, aged 2 months. And there is a picture there of little Dean. And tucked away in the far corner is Heartbreak Corner. This is the children's graveyard. Greatest sadness of all, I'm sure. Now just look at this inscription. Milo Wright, 2015. An angel in the book of life wrote down Milo's date of birth, then whispered as she closed the book, "Too beautiful for this earth." Well, I'm going to call a halt there. The baby garden, as they call it, is just so sad. I'm going to end the video at this point. But do come to it as a cemetery. It's a great cemetery, one of the very best. Till the next time.